6:30, June 15th, call the FinCom meeting to order. Take a roll call first. Paula?
Here.
Bonnie?
Here.
Walter? Here. Amy?
Here.
Aaron? Here. Mike? Peter?
I see Mike, just FYI.
I saw Peter too.
Yeah, Peter's on here also.
Peter, hit your space bar.
I know, I'm here. I'm trying to get my mouse over to it, that's all.
Tom? Here. Steve?
Here.
Rick? Here. Let's go back. Mike, are you on? Okay.
He must not hear you, but he's there.
Hey, it's there.
Listen,
Mike,
talking to Mike Units.
Mike Fiore, are you there?
Or not. That's weird.
Oh, he's on. I think he's muted.
He's definitely muted.
I'll send him a text.
All right. Sonia is not on, but she said she doesn't need anybody to take any notes or anything. So I guess we'll go that route.
Mike Fiore is unmuted now. Well, he was.
I know he's muted again. Nope, he's unmuted. Mike, are you there?
He must have his speakers off.
Could be. All right, well, we'll proceed, till we get to a vote. We're fine. Renee? I know you were on earlier.
I'm on still.
Would you like to, do your 10-minute version?
Yes.
Since I know you wanted to kind of get in and out.
Yeah, if possible.
I'm going to say go for it.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about briefly the updates that we've made to the marijuana bylaw and the marijuana overlay district since we met last. I can't remember when we met last, but it was a joint meeting. So there are a couple of things a couple of pieces of feedback that we took from both the planning board, from you guys, and the board of selectmen, and we made some modifications to the information that's presented. So I'm just going to go through a list of that, and then I'll talk about the modifications to the overlay as well. So a couple of things that we did in the bylaw itself since I last presented to you was we updated the phrase, or we removed the phrase adult use from the town meeting warrant article language. That was something that we actually removed from the bylaw and just referred to marijuana establishments. So that's been updated. We also made some minor modifications under Article 4, the use regulations, to identify social consumption establishments, just to ensure clarity and consistency with the state nomenclature. We had it listed as, I think, marijuana establishments excluding and including social consumption, but their actual, the state actually refers to it as social consumption establishments on its own. Additionally, in section 175.21.2 under establishments, we clarified that, and this was feedback from the planning board, that any marijuana establishments or medical treatment centers shall be permitted by special permit in the marijuana overlay district, subject to the limitations imposed by the bylaw. So they had asked for us just to get clarification in respect to the special permitting part. Under definitions, the planning board identified that in the host community agreement, we had the language listing as the legislative body was responsible for negotiating the HCA, and that was changed to the executive body, so it represented the Board of Selectmen as the responsible party for negotiating the host community agreement. Next, under section 175, 21.5, this is a section that talks about additional requirements and conditions. Again, we updated the phrase and removed the phrase adult use marijuana retail establishment to just read marijuana retailers in that section. Just again, a minor wording change there. Additionally, under that same section, one of the things that we talked about when we looked at the parcels to include in the marijuana overlay was specifically how did people access the facilities. So we put some language in there based on, what we wanted as part of the criteria that we looked at, but also what we wanted within the bylaw, just to be specific about the point of entrance. So what we did is the council gave us language that reads, on sites with multiple points of ingress, principal site access shall be from the more established thoroughfare to avoid disruption of residential neighborhoods. So that was something that we wanted to make sure that was included in the bylaw. Additionally, the planning board had some concerns about issuing a special permit to an owner. Initially, that was how it read, it was issued to the owner and to the site. So based on their request, we removed the issuance of the special permit to the owner, and we also allowed the transfer of the special permit of the same marijuana type and location to be completed without an applicant needing to go through the entire special permitting process. And that was something that the planning board felt strongly about, just to make the process for applicants smoother and to be more aligned with the current process. So now the language reads that special permits and site plan approval shall be issued for a specific type of marijuana establishment or MTC on a specific site parcel and shall be non-transferable to another type of marijuana establishment or MTC. Special permits, site plan approvals issued to a specific owner may be transferred to another marijuana establishment owner or MTC owner operating at the same site parcel as an amendment to the special permit. And then town council advised that if we wanted to know who owned a marijuana establishment, one of the things that the planning board could do is issue a condition in the special permit that can include language that any change in ownership of 50% or greater requires an update to the planning board. Lastly, there was some concern from the board in respect to the process around odor mitigation and difficulty in enforcement. So we reviewed this with town council, who indicated that the existing language in the bylaw set the standard and acknowledged that there was a challenge in the zoning enforcement. So she indicated that tools typically available for a municipality were fines of $300 per day or ordered injunction requiring cessation of the offending behavior. The other option that she provided to us that was new was, again, in the condition of the special permit, that they could provide a cultivation permit to be issued for a term of X amount of years, and that renewal was subject to the applicant demonstrating that there have been no complaints or issues with odor during the prior term. So that allows some additional checkpoints within the process. And as part of that, the IDC requested that the board considered language that would also allow an applicant an opportunity to resolve the issue, demonstrate that appropriate remediation occurred in a timely manner following receipt of a complaint or identification of an issue with no recurrence during the prior term. We just wanted, to allow the establishment to mitigate the problem before saying that they couldn't renew their, or as a condition to renewing their permit. So those were the only changes within the bylaw that occurred since we last met. And then additionally on the overlay district, initially, I believe, Pete, you were the one that commented that the diagrams were slightly difficult to read. One of the reasons is because there was a layer on there, the watershed protection area, that also was a diagonal, so that was actually taken off. And the other thing that we asked for as well is to show both images that reflected parcels as well as the satellite view. So now we have essentially two separate sets of maps. So depending upon what folks are more comfortable with in reading the map, the overlay district is still shown with a diagonal line, but it's shown either over the satellite view with the parcels or over the zoning district view with the parcels. There's also a section that was corrected. This didn't have anything to do with the marijuana overlay, but during the process, a resident identified that there were 3 parcels near Reservoir Street that weren't properly updated on the zoning map. So that was changed. Paul did some research on that, identified the correct information that was supposed to be there, and that was changed as part of this too, just to get everything aligned.
Is that making more more properties in it, or it took away property?
It took away a section of a small property that was at the corner of Reservoir and 140, closer to the center of town, that small triangle area.
Yep.
But not really, nothing that we would see an impact from, because those are small parcels. If anything went there, it would be a very small store or cultivation area.
Has anyone other than yourselves looked at the overlay itself for correctness? And seeing how there's one, there's probably going to be another. Instead of relying on town residents to identify certain things like that.
Well, I mean, again, that's part of the zoning, right? So it's years and years of changes that happened at town meetings that took place. So he was familiar with it, and he had worked with the previous planning director on that. And this was just something that was carried over from Serpent. So that's Mike. I don't know if you can answer that question, because that's more of a question for Paul in respect to what his plans are to make any updates to the map.
All is on.
Oh, I didn't see you,
Hi.
Paul. Sorry.
But that's okay. I mean, that's an excellent point. And one thing I want to just start off by saying is that, there were errors in the map. I can guarantee there's more errors as we converted it, because the original maps, the hand-drawn maps, had errors in them. And so our goal initially was to just mirror, just literally translate the existing map, the hand-drawn map, into a digital map. But it had its challenges. There was a mistake there, and I don't know exactly where, but there'll probably be other areas of that map that will have mistakes on it. But the good news is the fact that it's a digital map and it's based on parcels now, where the old map wasn't. This map will be much more accurate.
And in respect to the overlay, the impact of that, part of the bylaw specifies that in order for a marijuana establishment to be in a certain area, it has to not only be within the marijuana overlay district, but it also has to be within one of the appropriate zones. So commercial, village commercial, or industrial. So if there are any changes to the underlying zone, those will push through on the overlay, because those two criteria still need to be met. So it's kind of a safeguard for future changes as Paul and team work through it. But we would anticipate that the overlay would be updated as well. But in the event it was overlooked, we still have that as a safeguard.
Mr. Chairman,
Peter?
do we have the latest map? Did we get a PDF of the latest one sent to us?
I don't
Latest?
think so. I don't have one.
Peter, I would imagine you didn't. I actually can't send the file, and I imagine because I can't send through my town email that Michelle can't, but it is linked on the planning website. I don't know if that was provided to you guys.
Nope. But if you send the link in the chat, I can open up
Yeah.
this.
I sure can do that. Give me 1 second here.
So this might carry on until after our public hearing. But how many liquor establishments do we have in town?
9 licenses, you mean?
Yeah. So we can have a total of 2 of these marijuana retailers?
Correct. The bylaw indicates the state minimum, which is 20% of the liquor licenses.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. I'm like, okay, how many do we have? So it's 6:45. I think I need to close this out for a moment, if you don't mind, for opening up to the public hearing. So anyone with history, is that a vote, or is that we just do it?
I believe we vote to adjourn or vote to suspend. Or we adjourn and reconvene.
I guess. I'll go for that.
That's correct.
I need a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adjourn?
Second. Who was the second? Rick. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to adjourn our meeting temporarily to open up into our public hearing. All those in favor? Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes?
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom? Yeah. Steve?
Yes.
Rick? Yes. And I'm a yes. Okay. Do we have to formally open the public hearing?
Yes.
You do.
Oh, boy. Okay. It's gonna be fun. Need a motion and a second to open?
I think you just open it,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just open it.
like any other meeting.
Like,
Bang your gavel, baby.
does this work? Okay. So 6:47, opening the June 15th, public hearing portion of the FinCom meeting. Now, I'll be honest, I know I did this once before, I really can't remember what I'm supposed to do, or if I'm just supposed to see if there's any questions.
That's
Well, the budget's supposed to be presented and then opened up for questions afterwards. An overview of the budget.
All right. So. I'm gonna have to find that. Mike, unless you put an overview up of the budget?
Is it up now or not?
No.
Not yet.
Mr. Chairman,
Aaron?
in normal times, we'd simply be able to look around the room and see if, there was anyone in attendance. Before we put you through the exercise of explaining the budget, should we ask for any, attendees, if anyone is here for the public hearing to make themselves known?
Well, we can do that because that will save time. If there is anybody currently in attendance that needs an overview of the proposed budget as it stands today. Mr. Chairman? Bob?
Hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good, thanks. So I've reviewed the budget myself. There's no need to go through it. I'm just here to listen to what's going on. But I've got a copy of it and I have had a chance to review it, so not necessary as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can, for anybody who perhaps listens to this after the fact, I guess quick and dirty, the budget process for fiscal year 21 is really kind of in flux at this point due to the pandemic. And because the state of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has basically been closed for 3 months, the ability to more accurately than not project what our revenue will be next year has really been eliminated. We don't have truly that ability at this point in time. So we're making a best guess, a best effort to put forth a budget that we believe is reasonable, that we hope, and that's a key word, hope, that the assumptions underlying with state aid and whatnot carry through into, we're guesstimating August, when the state finally kind of gives us that information. For fiscal year 21, every department has not gotten what they wanted. Many departments, most departments are, I guess, the best way to put it is level service. So any increase in the individual departments are really basically contractual. Anybody who wanted additions, I don't recall, I don't think they got them. So, I mean, that's the budget that we're going to be presenting in a couple of weeks. We understand that this may change. It could get better come August, September, when the state gives us the information, provides the information. It could get worse. And all the departments are aware in the back of their mind to be ready if it gets worse. But as of June 15th, you know, this is the best guess that we as a town, we as a FinCom can put together. I don't know if anybody else wants to add, you know, commentary. I'm hearing none. So, with that said, and I don't believe we have anybody from the public who has raised their hands or would like to say anything, now would be the time. Otherwise, I believe we can close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman.
Peter,
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Was that Tom and Rick?
Yeah.
Peter, was that what you wanted to do?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, got a motion and a second to close the public hearing portion of the June 15th FinCom meeting. I will take a roll call for those in favor. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So now we can segue back into Renee's presentation, if anybody else.
I think you might have to call it to meeting to order again.
Do we?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is that with a vote?
Oh, that's with your gavel, man. Come on.
Yeah. You're the man with the plan.
Okay, 6:55, calling the FinCom meeting of June 15th back in session. So now, Renee, if there's any more to your presentation, or if anybody has questions, because that's kind of where we were at.
I just have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
And Renee, it points to the last paragraph. Is it our bylaw supersedes the state commission?
The paragraph you're referring to.
It's 175-2110. Last paragraph.
Yes, the terms of the bylaw govern unless there's explicit direction otherwise. That's how it's written.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Walter?
Yeah, Renee, I don't object to it, but I'm curious, does that change that with respect to transferring the permit, do we lose any oversight or information if that were to happen over requiring a new permit?
No, so that's it's a item in the bylaw, but overall the marijuana establishments require a host community agreement to be entered upon, so there's still going to be oversight from the Board of Selectmen. If it's a retail establishment, there'll be additional oversight through a subcommittee that we're developing specific to the dispensaries, just based on the amount of interest that we've had in town and the limited licenses. So while they can transfer the special permit, they still have to have an approved HCA before they do that.
Great. And just a quick follow-up, since you mentioned it, what has the response been or the interest?
So we have, right now, if I remember correctly, 6 or 7 retail establishments interested. There are 2 who have secured site locations. There is one that is about to secure a site location. The 2 that have them are not in currently zoned areas. The 3rd one would be, it's an industrial, so it would be in the zoned area. And then again, there's interest from some other parties. So nothing consistent. You know, one of the things that obviously everybody is concerned with is anytime, depending upon how contracts are written, if you enter into an agreement, you know, you're also putting some money down on it. So certainly the pandemic has caused a little shift within our timing and, you know, wanting this to be approved last month so that the process can move forward and look at economic development. So I had a conversation with town council today and she provided some guidance where we can continue to move forward, even though, you know, this would be something still pending to be voted on by the town. So we're going to try to do what we can to keep it moving forward because it is a really lengthy process for applicants specific to the state. They have to have an HCA signed in order to get a state license. So we're going to try to move that process along in tandem and hope for, you know, this bylaw to be voted on.
Great, thanks. One more, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I've read some articles about various communities kind of pushing the boundaries as far as requirements and cash contributions to charities and, you know, extraordinary requirements on the dispensaries. Are we confident we're well within the boundaries of the norms and you know what people would expect?
Yes.
Our expectations.
Yes. So the law actually dictates from a perspective of the community impact fee, which is identified through the HCA, it is a 3% limit to that. So where we would expect, you know, again, an HCA is a negotiation tool. So when you think about it, a retail dispensary is going to have a much higher revenue than, say, a cultivation facility. So we are allowed through the state and through the HCA to have a community impact fee of 3%. There are also, I believe, 2 or 3 items within the HCA of additional donations, and so it's up to the companies whether or not they would want to participate in those as well. I've been contacted by a couple of them who have asked specifically, you know, what nonprofits should they look at within the town, just to give them some ideas. Of course, most of them have done their research too, and you know, they're aware of the Cover to Kindness, Need, Texas Community, you know, the various nonprofits that we have. But that's all within the negotiations, and certainly, you know, when we were looking at this, we considered that as well because there were a lot of articles about how this was extortion. There were charges that were brought up on people, and that's not something that we want to do. And we certainly don't want to get into a partnership with a business where, you know, they're more concerned with money and I don't want to call it payoffs, but, money as opposed to being a good partner. So I think that's where the application process will help us to identify what companies we feel are going to be a good fit, with the town. So we put in some additional controls there as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? All right, then. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.
Mike, is this something we need to vote on now, or?
I'll let you know that the selectmen voted last week in support. This is Article 21 and 22.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I vote to recommend Article 21 as written in the warrant.
Can I ask one thing before we go to that? How come my PDF today says Article 16?
Oh, you're right. Because all the selectmen voted the other night to put off until a future meeting Articles 10 through 14 having to do with the building project. So you're correct.
Okay, so
My recommended, so 16 is an article, or I'm not recommending 16? Which article is it?
So Article 16 is now what was 21?
Right. Yep.
Okay. So Peter, I think you're amending that to Article 16?
Article 16, yes.
That's what he said.
Okay, got a motion. Without a second.
I seconded it.
Okay, Tom. Motion and a second to recommend Article 16, Norton zoning bylaws in regards to the marijuana overlay district. Any further discussion? Hearing none, go to the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. Okay, Mike, now what?
Article 17 is just the amendment to the map for the overlay districts.
And that's, we didn't get a handout on that, did we? Maybe we did. Wait, no, we probably did.
Renee sent the link in the chat.
16.
Paul, would you have that?
I have it if you want me to share my screen.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Not yet. Small.
Hold on, I'm making it bigger. I'm working on it.
That's good.
There you go.
Okay. So this is just the map that corresponds to Article 16?
Correct.
So it's,
So Bill, in respect to this map, there are no material changes from the last presentation. It still has the 5 areas: Route 140 North, East Main Street Business Parks, Norton Commerce Center, the industrial zones in South Norton, and the business and industrial zones in Chartley. You'll see that the yellow diagonal is the marijuana overlay. And this is over the satellite view. And Amy, if you go to the next screen, you'll see from the town perspective, it will show the same marijuana overlay, but with the zone districts underneath. So it provides it in 2 different views. And then the remainder of the map is each section with both views as well. Zoomed in. So Amy, if you want to go to the next. So this is the area by the Xfinity Center. And you'll see on the next page, it's commercial and village commercial zones.
Just to clarify, what is allowed, what activity is allowed in these districts now, or will be allowed in?
So our current bylaws allow us to have marijuana establishments within industrial. So any industrial area, any establishment can go there.
Okay, thank you.
So hopefully this looks a bit cleaner than the last time without another layer added on that's showing a diagonal. This is the 495, 123 area, the Blue Star. The commercial area is the like the Dunkin' Donuts. There's a liquor store there. And then the part that's not in the overlay is Red Mill Village and the East Main Street apartments. I think, is it East Main Street? Mm-hmm. Okay.
so basically Bernie and Phil's to the town line and,
Correct.
okay.
This is near Bay Road, the Norton Commerce Center. And the only difference from the existing bylaws, we just don't have the overlay on this, but this is currently zoned for marijuana establishments and NTCs.
So all these maps will be available for the town meeting?
Yes.
So with an outdoor town meeting, is it handouts or is there some sort of projectors gonna be attempted?
The projector was discussed. I don't believe that there's been, Mike, unless you know, I'm not aware of a decision on either of those.
No, we haven't settled that yet. You know, probably more than likely handouts because we're not sure how this projector will look outside.
Yeah.
So this portion looks, you may have some questions on the right side of this because it looks a little different because there are a couple of industrial areas that aren't included in the map. Those are not included because they're within 500 feet of a school. And that's the state requirement is 500 feet. We as a town have the ability to reduce that requirement if we wanted, but we didn't feel it was appropriate to reduce it.
Okay,
This is 123 as well. Someone's not sure.
for the Attleboro line.
So this is North Worcester Street right here,
Yep.
just so I can get my bearings. So this is the little parcel that they're rebuilding that like service station on.
All right, anybody have any questions? Any further questions?
Any maps you want to see again before I stop sharing them? All right, crickets, got it.
Silence is acceptance, Amy.
Mr. Chairman,
Peter,
I recommend this Article 17, the maps.
Second,
get a motion and a second to recommend Article 17, which is a depiction of all 5 sections of the, I guess, Article really 16. Any further discussion? Hearing none, go to the vote. Paula? Yes. Bonnie?
yes.
Walter?
Yes?
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
No,
Rick? Yes. And I'm a yes. Okay.
We have, Paul DiGiuseppe, the planning director, who is on, and, if he could present the other articles for the planning board.
Right,
Yep.
and thank you guys, appreciate your support.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renee.
Okay, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, I presented this as well. I think this was back in March. And since then, the planning board has met a couple of times as part of their required public hearings. And on May 19th, along with marijuana, the Village Center Core zoning district and rezoning, they recommended unanimously to support and sent to town meeting. Now, the language has not changed since you've seen it back in March. I have a presentation which was pretty much the same presentation you saw back in March. So I don't know if you want me to run through it. It takes about 10 minutes, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I'm more in favor of questions unless other people want to hear the speech spiel again.
Mr. Chairman?
Steve?
Paul, there was a question when you did your original presentation regarding, if I remember right, how CVS and places like that would be presented or if they ever got changed. And I'm not sure if we ever really got a final conclusion to that discussion. I think there was a talk about egress and again, I'm trying to go back. I don't have any notes from it.
Well, uses like CVS would continue to have the same rights under this new district. So they could expand. There wouldn't be issues for them. I do recall the conversation you mentioned about egress, about access points. If I'm not mistaken, right, there was an issue about the number of access points that could be created.
I think it was.
Yes, that was discussed.
Yeah.
Parking in front or behind buildings or things like that. I think there's a couple different questions.
Yeah, well, the parking would still be, again, for future, this is for new development or redevelopment in this area. The parking would be put to the side and back, and that the buildings would be closer, the building would be placed closer to the street. very close to the street, within about 10 feet and as far back as potentially 40 feet. So the building would shift. They also, working with the planning board throughout this process, one of the things we did put on there is, currently, there's, the village center core district would, the village commercial, the existing zoning, you can apply to, Mass DOT and get your access points. And usually you could get up to 2 on a site, just depending on circumstances and what DOT's criteria are. Here we're making access points a little more difficult in terms of having too many. We were concerned about too many curb cuts and driveways being a safety issue to the public, for pedestrians and cyclists. So what the planning board came to was, with 1, you're fine. If you're trying to get 2, 2 driveways would trigger a special permit review from them to try to, not disallow it, but give it a lot more attention to it. For it again, the primary purpose again was to promote more pedestrian and bicycle safety.
I have a question. Paul, you may have touched on this back in our joint meeting in March, so correct me if I can't remember. What types of businesses would this proposed village center core exclude?
Well, it would exclude uses that are primarily auto-oriented in nature. So things like service repair stations, auto repair shops, gas stations, uses like that where they're primarily just either, just primarily for vehicles. So gas station, obviously that's vehicle oriented, or a repair shop. So I guess I'll jump ahead, in anticipation of a question on the proposed Cumberland Farms at 60 West Main Street, which I'm sure many of you know, the planning board denied. That is going through an appeal process. They've preserved their zoning rights under the current village commercial. So even if this were passed, if Cumberland Farms wins their appeal, they could go ahead even develop, even if the property was rezoned to village center core. But the goal was to try to get uses that are where people will stay, to create more gathering places. Think about Bog Iron. You go in there and it's just a place to be for an hour or two. Wendell's is another place. So we're trying to promote more places like that. More gathering places for residents and visitors.
Thank you, Paul.
I have a question. Now, since most of the existing gas stations, auto repair shops are in the zone now, obviously they're grandfathered in. Where in the future, and what if these ever change hands, and then if they change hands, would they still continue to be operated as auto gas stations? And if they're not allowed to continue that, where in the town would they go?
They can't continue. They can't continue if a use doesn't align now with the zoning, and we have that all over town. The use can continue, but if the use is disabandoned for 2 years, then they lose their grandfathering rights. And so the property would have to revert, or the uses would have to revert to what's in the underlying zoning, or seek rezoning itself. Now, to your other question, now if you're talking about gas stations or those would be determined, they can go in where commercial and village commercial are allowed, except where you have zone 2 of the water resource protection district, which the state prohibits gas stations in any land that is in zone 2 because of the potential for contamination that could make its way into the well. So much of the eastern part of town is in zone 2, but down toward Attleboro, they wouldn't have such limits for gas stations.
It just seems to be restricting, quite a bit. well, I don't think anyone was going to come in with a new gas station anywhere, but you never know, years, decades down the road, what might happen. But that would just kind of, eliminate a good part of the town where they couldn't. And again, it's not in the foreseeable future, but you never know what's going to happen years from now.
So I just want to make sure we're all clear. There actually aren't any gas stations in this district. It only, the Speedway is close to it, but it's actually outside of it. Because this is only, if you don't mind, I can just show you the map of where this.
Well, there's High Tech Automotive there, there's Kingman there, and a few others.
Yeah, well, those, okay, so auto, let me just pull the map up real quick. If you can see that. And so, yes, there are two auto repair shops there. And again, they can continue, but if they become inactive, if the auto repair use becomes inactive for 2 years, then they would lose the rights to that under this new one. So gas stations are just outside of it because, well, it's not
Okay,
even,
that was my question. Well, just to speed things up, where would Speedway be? It'd be off this.
Yeah, it would be just, if you see the cursor, it would be, because it's right off of Freeman Street. So it's down
Okay.
the bottom left.
All right, that's good. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Captain Speedway's on 120 West Main Street in Norton. And before that it was Hess, and before that it was Stewart.
So Paul, in sticking with the car theme, if someone wanted to put an electric recharging station, would that be prohibited? It's not a gas station.
No. I don't know that we even have such a use in our zoning district. We didn't speak to it, and I'm just trying to recall I'm not sure what that would fall under. So it would just be in one of these new recharge stations.
Sure, like the one they put at Mansfield Crossing.
Right.
Yeah.
I would, if it's like that, we would probably, I don't know that I have a clear answer because our code doesn't actually, I would argue it doesn't actually have such a category. So we might have to revise the bylaw down the road to accommodate it.
Time to start your list for fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say that that's the type of use that we still wouldn't want in this small area. I think it's a great use for the town, but if it's just a place to charge a car and nothing else, then, unless they made it a secondary use to some other use, like if it were a restaurant and they were, in another part of the property and they had a charging station, that might be, that could work.
Well, if I remember the presentation correctly, I thought that you said there would eventually, hopefully, be shared parking areas kind of behind the buildings.
Right.
If someone wanted to put in a charging station, it seems to me that trying to target those areas might specifically make more sense.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I thought you meant one of these. There are some around the country, these large facilities for charging, but if it's metered, if you're just talking about 2 or 3 like we have at Town Hall, those would be allowed. Those types of facilities would be allowed. My apologies, there are some others I've read about where it's, many charging stations, but those would be allowed. And yes, we are trying to incentivize shared parking in this district.
So I guess my point, though, as far-fetched as it may be, is that they say the electric car is the way of the future for those who buy cars. But B, if someone were to come in because Walgreens goes out of business and wanted to convert that basically to a charging area, that would not be allowed.
And I think as the Director of Planning and Economic Development, I would have a conversation with them about what other possible uses there could be there. I mean, I think part of this is we have to be promoting this area as this type of gathering area, but if there was nothing but just a charging, I think that the answer would be no, we wouldn't allow it. But again, it's not in the code, that type of use exclusively, but if it's like what Amy's mentioning, then yeah, it could be. So if let's just say, I don't know, just say Bog Iron wanted to add some electric vehicle stations to it, we would absolutely support that because the primary use is still the commercial operation.
Right.
It's Steve.
Who's that? Steve.
Yeah, so Paul, in your examples here, you said, if Walgreens went out of business and someone wanted to bring in a use station, you said, well, we would probably not and try to have them work with something else. That gives to me, does that mean that somebody that owns property here, if they want to put something in, they need some types of special permit or permission to put their business in? Are we talking about that? So say Walgreens goes out and somebody wants to put in, I don't know, car hop.
Well, it depends. It depends. If it went from Walgreens to, let's just say CVS, I know they're across the street, then no. But if even now, even under today's world with Village Commercial, if you went from, if Walgreens closed and somebody then wanted to build tear it down and build, but let's say, we'll just say a restaurant, a large restaurant. So let's say over, let's not say restaurant, but let's say a 10,000 square foot retail area. We would require a special permit for a large building over 10,000 square feet and a site plan review. Actually, one of the things we did in this district was, so right now, if you have a building over 2,500 square feet, a commercial building, you have to apply for a site plan. When you think about it, a 2,500 square foot building, many houses, single family homes are bigger than that. But in this district, the planning board did agree if it's under 5,000 square feet now, you wouldn't require a special a site plan review for that. That would have to go through the planning board. So it actually is, in that regard, more permissive than what it is right now. Because if a new project comes in and it's 2,500 square feet, they automatically have to go to the planning board for a site plan.
So I guess my question is, maybe I'm just want to be a little more clear. Someone comes in and they're not going to change that Walgreens at all. They're just going to start another business.
Yeah.
They need a site plan for that?
No, well, most likely not.
Right. So,
I mean, if it's a significant change of use, it's possible they would,
okay.
but they would have to anyway now.
All right.
But one of the things we were trying to do in this district was to give more flexibility as an incentive to see development in this area. So that was one of the reasons we increased that threshold from 2,500 square feet to 5,000 in hopes that people will see that as more of an incentive. But yeah, there could be circumstances where a proper project comes in and they'd have to do it, but we're trying to actually reduce that chance of having to go for, through planning board for a review for it. But we have very clear thresholds that if they meet, they have to go to the planning board.
Have we reached out to any of those businesses currently in that proposed zone to get their input or what they?
Yeah, we actually did back in January or February. We actually sent postcards to all the property owners and all the businesses in that area. Of course, we were planning on doing a lot of extensive outreach, but then, COVID-19 hit. I did hear from a couple businesses. You know, there were two, one property owner had a few questions, but ultimately they were in support of the change. So we did, you know, we were hoping to do a whole lot more than what happened, but we did additional outreach to them even prior to, you know, way back in February, in the early stages of this whole process.
So you sent out, you know, let's just say 40 businesses and property owners, and 2 responded to you?
Yes, right, it was.
And no one said no way?
No. No.
Doesn't seem like a rounding endorsement of the change. You know what I mean? Like, I look at the map quickly, I counted 20-something properties, but I don't know if I want to write those squares and rectangles and things, but it just seems, wow, I would like to have seen more of the property owners have like a yay or nay, like I agreed or not agreed with. It would have been nice.
Well, and they were also notified for the planning board public hearings. You know, I've had discussions with some of the businesses as well. You know, I you know, certainly have had plenty of conversations about this with Bog Iron. I should say Bog Iron was very supportive of this. In fact, two of their properties are part of this, and they want the piece behind them to be rezoned because they need it for parking. You know, I've talked with other businesses about it, and they seem supportive of it. I mean, just in my experience, you know, it's hard to get people to come out when they support it. I mean, even tonight, right? You had your public hearing on the budget, and well, you know, Bob spoke up, but you didn't have anybody else either. And this is a public hearing, and I would interpret that as they're okay with it. I mean, because typically when people don't like something, they will come out and voice their opposition to it. And
people don't like a lot what we do, and nobody comes to the public meetings anyways. So
well, you're right, and it's not a whole lot different for us in planning. I just don't see these as a radical change for them. And in fact, you know, again, while some of the uses might be more restricted, they can actually build more development on their properties. So I don't know why, unless they, you know, in the case of like 60 West Main, I would get that, but for everybody else, it's like you now have more flexibility and you can actually build a bigger building and build more on your site than you can right now.
And Paul, just a quick question. Why is it so important to get this article on the meeting of this meeting with all the other challenges we have?
Well, we had been working on this since December, January, and we were, of course, working with the town manager and with the select board. You know, we just wanted to keep going forward in the planning board. You know, when they voted on May 26th on all the zoning bylaw changes, they recognized that, you know, the zoning items might be referred back to them at town meeting, but they ultimately felt their perspective was, we support all these amendments, so that's our recommendation to the public, is to let them know they're supportive of it.
The chairman,
Mike?
The selectmen the other night voted in support of all the zoning articles, but they also are recommending that at town meeting, all of them be referred back to the planning board for further study. We wanted to keep the process going, but we didn't want to bog down the town meeting with all the articles.
So who refers it back?
The town moderator will make that recommendation.
Okay. So then, in essence, would each one come up and then the moderator refers it back, or is is
The
it,
recommendation would be that the moderator, refer all of them at once.
okay, so it's not like here, this is what we're thinking of, but you get to think about it until the fall meeting. It's just Articles 10 through 12 are gonna be referred back without detail type thing?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Peter?
I'm a little confused with this, in terms of the process. So the Board of Selectmen approved or they recommended the articles, but yet the moderator is gonna refer them back? I'm a little confused. Do we recommend the same thing to refer them back? I don't know, what's the recommendation?
The same thing, vote to approve the articles, and at the end, you can make support the recommendation that they not be, debated at the town meeting and all be referred back to the planning board for study. The purpose of that motion that was provided by town council was so that the, articles aren't dead for 2 years. That they,
So if it gets voted down, it's 10 for 2 years?
right,
Now I get it.
So, which, specifically, I guess, which articles are we talking about that are gonna be handled in this back?
14, 15, 16, 17, and 18.
So 14 through 18. So what Renee just did, the two articles, that's gonna be referred back.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mike, just point of clarification for that. We did not vote for Articles 16 and 17 for that. And actually, I don't think we officially voted any of them because we're still waiting town council's feedback.
Okay.
But Bill, that is the expected, that's the expected process. And the reason is because we don't feel, both of these can be, specifically, obviously, the marijuana bylaw change could be a controversial issue, and we want to allow the residents the ability to come and discuss it, voice their opinions, and we don't, we want to focus this particular meeting, given the COVID-19 crisis right now, on reducing the amount of people and the length of time for this town meeting in June.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Peter.
Peter?
So, we already voted to recommend Articles 16 and 17. Do we need to amend those recommendations to say that we recommend those articles to be sent back to committee, whatever the term's going to be? Is that what we really recommend? Because we either usually recommend to approve or not approve or no action taken. I don't understand what this.
The selectmen also voted to approve the articles, but as Renee said, we're just waiting on clarification on that motion from town council, but that is the intent to show that you support, if you do, to show that you support the articles, but you realize that at this time, people may not be able to get to the town meeting, may not feel comfortable, that would want to be involved with these articles.
And so if they get referred back, then whenever the next time these come in front, whenever these again become an article on a warrant, we go through the process again, just to make sure. It's not like we're approving them today or recommending them today, and that recommendation carries over to October, November, because we could all have a change of heart between today and then. So is that?
You could,
Chairman? Tom?
Yeah, why can't we move no action? Since we are going to refer them to another time, rather than recommend them and refer them to another time. That only seems like double jeopardy to me. It says, oh yeah, they're okay now, but we'll discuss it again in October to see if they're still okay, even though nothing changes.
I'm a little confused on that myself, but I guess before we ask Mike to kind of opine on that, is there a possibility that on the day of the meeting, Bob or Walter can go rogue and just say, you guys all voted for it, let's do it?
That's part of the clarification we're waiting from town council for.
No offense to Bob or Walter, but.
This is Pete. So I'm still confused. As the finance committee, all articles, we have a recommendation. Our recommendation would be to approve the article, right? That's our recommendation. Our recommendation is to no, we don't approve of it. Or our recommendation is no action, Jim. Now, we just voted to approve. That's the action we made on 2 articles. If the intent is to not approve these articles, but to put them back into committee or to send them back without essentially killing them, then that ought to be our official recommendation, not an approval and then somebody else making some other motion. So if the committee wants to change and do the, delay it for later, then I would want to reopen those 2 articles and make a different recommendation than approval.
I would advise against that, just going with what town council says. The process is to show, if you do, to show your support, but then in the end, may support not hearing them, putting them back to committee because of the COVID situation.
And Mike, didn't she indicate as well that, there's legislation that's being moved right now to extend the time frame surrounding the public hearing and the time that the articles are voted upon? So that's something else that if, essentially what this means is that we have these articles, we refer them back to committee and they pause, right? And the hope is that the timelines stop as well so that we don't have to do additional notifications to abutters, which cost thousands of dollars, so we don't have to have public hearings again. And that's really the intent. And, the other thing is we also talked about removing the articles from the warrant as well. And because they're put forth by a public body, they have to appear unless that public body votes to withdraw the article.
So then someone's going to stand up to move these after the debate happens when they open up an article. We read our approval. I'm just trying to get the whole phase of what's going to go on. We usually say, all right, we approve Article, say 16. And then they're going to hear some debate on it. And then hearing no debate, the moderator will say, I'm going to recommend that this go back. Or does someone else in the public or from FinCom have to recommend it goes back to committee? Is that the term we're using?
Peter, I think if I understood Mike correctly, FinCom isn't even going to be reading the article to the meeting. I think the then moderator is basically saying, hey, these next 4 articles, 5 articles, whatever, are being referred back to committee. Is that how this works?
Right.
So on paper, it's going to show that we recommended it, but the moderator, unless they go rogue, is going to basically say, we're referring this back to committee because there's not enough people in front of me, some reason.
Someone from the public can't say, I want to put it forward to a vote?
That would have been my next question.
It's a town meeting. Anybody can actually put forward an article.
That's the question right now in front of town council that we're waiting to hear back on.
So when.
Then I think, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
why, you got it, why we're wasting our time?
This is the last minute crap we wanted to avoid.
We don't have a very good record when it comes to zoning changes in front of the town meeting. Doing it
No,
again.
we don't. So when do we expect, or when do we hope to hear from town council?
I just texted her and told her I need an answer. But you know, this isn't the same as in the past. I mean, we're ready to go on these articles. It's not anyone's fault other than a virus that we're afraid may discourage some people from coming to the meeting who should have an opportunity to give input on this. That's why the idea is a little different, showing your support so that, you know, the process isn't held up, other than we're putting it back to committee for study for a future meeting, because we just don't want to handle them at this meeting.
So if the selectmen have recommended it and FinCom were to say no action, does that prevent it from going back to committee?
We'll ask that question, but I think that that'll raise an issue for more debate, because people will be saying, well, why didn't the FinCom support these articles like the selectmen did? We understand the other thing that you're referring them back, but why didn't the planning board, why didn't the finance committee support them?
Because we're more black and white and we don't like that gray area.
Mr. Chairman, I feel like we did this at the last town meeting, though. We refused to move the planning board articles because they weren't prepared in time and we weren't prepared to move them. So I feel like this is, I'm very interested to hear what town council has to say, but I feel like this is definitely a slippery slope where we could end up with somebody standing up on the floor at town meeting like, I came here because these were on the warrant. I want to vote right now.
Right.
And then what are we doing?
So one of the things that the town council indicated as well is that if we do intend to do this, that we communicate it. So not only do we communicate how we're going to have and hold a town meeting outside and what social distancing criteria will be in effect, but also that we are planning certain actions based on some of the articles so that people don't feel like they have to come out, and so they're not quote unquote duped and thinking that we're going to move these forward without everybody being present.
This is extremely disappointing that we're going through, we already voted on one set of articles and pretty much the whole presentation on another set of articles for the bylaws, to only then find out that there's kind of back and forth and what the action point is overall. I look at it as very disappointing, and I would have thought we would have been right up front and said, this is where we are in the process.
Mr. Chairman, what does it take to pull the article? What does it take to pull the article? I mean, we have done that before. Boards have pulled articles up to the last minute. Matter of fact, we've got something written here where some articles are already being moved to October. Why couldn't we move these articles to October? Then we don't have to do anything.
I think what I'm hearing is if you do that with the planning articles, then they kind of get into a two-year dead zone where you can't do anything with them. So if I'm hearing that correctly, I understand what's going on, but from a FinCom position, and I have no hesitation at the meeting to say, hey, FinCom voted no action because it was unclear at the time of our meeting how this would go. And though I think we are in support of the couple we've heard so far, there were just too many variables to, at the end of the day, vote. That's kind of where I'm.
Mr. Chairman? Bob Kimball. I listened to some of the early conversations about this, and my understanding of it was this. If you don't refer it back to committee, send it to a future town meeting, it does die in the water and goes away for 2 years. If it's referred to committee, it allows the planning board not to have additional public hearings, do not have to notify the abutters. It pretty much freezes everything. So my understanding at that time was if you do it this way, it doesn't cost the planning board time and money to go back and do it all over again a second time for the fall. By freezing it, by referring it back to committee, it pretty much just, yes, we've heard you, we understand you want to do this, but we don't have enough information, we're going to refer it back to you. In this case, it's not information, it has to do with the pandemic and trying to get people to, take care of the town business in the best way we can without, hurting anyone, and keeping the meeting as small as possible, and also giving everybody an opportunity to talk and discuss about anything they want to talk about. So, I understand what they're trying to do, and I understand why they're referring it back. It's just a question of how we can clearly do that. And if the moderator refers the article back to the planning board at the very, very beginning, that's the question that has to be addressed. My opinion would be the moderator pretty much runs a meeting. He or she has the right to do that, just to refer it back to committee and not allow any discussion. But that's something Mike Eunice is going to have to get additional information on before town meeting.
I don't know how the town moderator cannot have an article that's been proposed to the town meeting be heard, or let someone in town recommend the meeting and someone second and now we vote on it. I mean, that's what the town meeting is, right?
Someone could do that. I mean, I just hope that people are understanding. I mean, we can't control people, but we just hope they're understanding the reason why that recommendation's being made.
So
why can't we recommend our recommendation be to go back to committee? That's what we want to do.
My thoughts on that, just my thoughts, would be that you, with your recommendations, you vote to support these articles, and then at the end of the Article 18, you can put a statement that though the planning board does support these articles, the planning board understands that due to the COVID-19 virus, there are residents that won't be able to attend the town meeting, and we are supporting a recommendation to move these back to committee for study. I mean, you're just being honest with people, and you can put it right in your recommendation.
But I think that would be in the recommendation of each and every article that let's say we just did 16 and 17, we'd have to amend to make that recommendation. And usually as a committee, we recommend something, that's the vote, and then the chairman writes up some notes on it, and then we kind of approve those notes, right? I guess that would be kind of the notes or his explanation that we approve, is that right?
Yeah, that would be in the motion if we're gonna move it, but you're saying the FinCom's not gonna move it. If the FinCom moves it, because it's recommended, we should be moving it. And if we move it, then you have to second, move it back to committee or whatever. We approve it or we move it.
So
I just think there's gonna be a lot of confusion to the town. I mean, there's only 20 of us here, we're all someone, and now you get on the town meeting floor and you have the same conversation, and I think it's just gonna confuse people So what would the difference be other than, I know we said about the 2 years, but then it's just, this article is not ready for presentation to the townspeople for a vote, it sounds like to me, and that's usually what.
Well, no, the difference is the article is ready for presentation. It's that the people that we should be presenting to aren't ready to come to a meeting.
And I look at the perception as the reverse, honestly.
So this is Renee. I'm just going to add to this. Everything when we review these with planning board, when we've reviewed it with IDC, the direction that we've taken and what I would suggest is a direction taken now, because these are on the warrant. So they're, it's, again, we can't remove them unless the public bodies that have put them forth withdraw them. And if they appear on the warrant and for whatever reason, we don't have the moderator doesn't have the ability to refer them back to committee in the beginning, then they're going to be heard. Like, my recommendation is to do what we've been doing over the last several months, is proceeding forward as if they will be heard on the floor at town meeting. If, again, what we are hoping is that we will get clarification from town council on the actions that can be taken before we post this warrant come Wednesday.
In addition to that, I would suggest that you get the message out to people prior to the meeting that these articles are not going to be addressed, because, as you've all said, if somebody comes in and they move the article, anyway, we have to listen to it. And the only way we can do that, to stop that, would be to ask that everyone be aware of the fact that we're going to move these back to the planning, for the committee, for whatever reason, and that the article will not be addressed. If somebody stands up and they want to talk about it, I don't know how we can stop that.
Well, that's Bob, again, what we've asked Lauren on, right? That's what we want clarification on, that if they're referred to committee in the beginning, is there anything else that can happen on the floor? So,
Yeah,
again, to her advice, we have to communicate. If that's our intent, we need to communicate that out to the townspeople.
She did responded that someone could move them. So, but hopefully people are understanding and they wouldn't do something like that.
I think you're giving people way too much credit. I think it's very dangerous to go this route, exceptionally dangerous.
I agree. I think this is a gift to somebody that wants these moved to show up, knowing that there's not going to be much interest in it.
And the danger now, I think, is that we're kind of in a situation where, unfortunately, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. If we don't move them and people are there that want to discuss them, they're going to be angry. No matter how much you communicate, we're not going to get to everyone. If we don't move them and if we do move them and it doesn't go well, or people move them from the floor and have brought people with the intention of making them fail, then we run that risk because we won't have promoted getting people that feel positively about them to the meeting.
Then it could go the other way also.
Either way, there's going to be a group of people that are going to feel like they were either misled, misinformed, or not given their kind of due process in the process.
Well, 2 more cents here. I still would recommend all these zoning changes because there have been public hearings and the zoning board does a lot of work. A lot of work's been done on these, and in a normal circumstance, like I said, I put 16 and 17, I said, yes, let's do it. And normally I say yes, because there's been plenty of time for people to do that. And I don't know how I want to vote yet. I kind of want to vote yes, and just move it along, but I worry.
I hate to say that I had technical difficulties through much of this conversation, so I missed most of it. I myself, to the part I heard was really in favor of no action. But again, I missed a good 5 minutes of this due to technical difficulties. So I'm gonna leave it to anyone else, whether they want to revisit, was it 16, 17, or whether they want to vote on what Paul was presenting, or how we want to proceed.
Mr. Chairman?
Walter?
So maybe I missed it, but is it still an option for the planning board to voluntarily pull those without incurring the 2-year dead zone?
The problem is, if they do pull them, they have to start the whole process over again.
What does the process entail? Because in my mind, the process is writing the article and that part's done. So I'm just trying.
Public hearings and that kind of stuff.
Okay, the public hearings, and that's expensive, right? Okay, I got that.
Yeah.
And thousands of dollars maybe noticing in noticing for the paper, the paper,
Right.
and marijuana had about 1,500 abutters, so this was expensive.
Mr. Chairman?
Peter?
Normally I would approve these, so I'm gonna make a recommendation to approve Article, what are we talking about, 18 at this point, Mike?
You are talking now about Article 14.
Well, I recommend Article 14.
And Chair, I believe that's 14 and 15, which is the map amendment associated with it.
I'll do that one next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I have a motion and a second to recommend Article
14, I forgot already.
Uh-oh, did we lose Bill again?
Did we lose Bill again? Vice Chair, take over, man.
All right, do we hear a second?
Yes, I second it.
All right, sorry.
That's okay.
So, is there any other conversation?
I have a question. Did we resolve Amy's lose-lose situation? I'm still concerned about that.
Listening to the conversation, I don't think that was resolved. I thought Amy brought up some good points, and I don't think anything was 100% resolved in the conversation.
Walter, this is my reasoning. At this point, usually in the process, we've seen these and they've gone through their whole process of this. And we usually, I hate to say rubber stamp it, but we look at it and we say, yeah, that looks pretty good. We agree with that. Unless they have last minute changes like, look, so that's why I'm recommending it, because this is generally the process. And whether people come to the town meeting because of COVID or not, sometimes we have very small town meetings without COVID. So.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I just see it. It's so easy for this to go wrong by somebody standing up in the audience and doing something that we don't want them to do because they have the right to do it. So it just seems like we're setting up for a really dangerous meeting because we're going to be telling people we're not going to discuss these things, but somebody could override us and discuss and force a vote. I mean, can we even make a decision tonight based on that unknown?
Sorry, Peter, but I see town council.
Town council's on.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Lauren.
Hey, Lauren, how you been? Lauren, how you been?
I'm okay. I understand you guys are discussing how to proceed with town meeting and, with the articles that you want to talk about, don't want to talk about, and that kind of thing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the questions that I was asked about this are, what happens if the planning board articles, the zoning articles are not referred back to committee? So if a planning board article, a zoning amendment is not referred back to committee, then essentially it's considered negative action for purposes of state law, and it can only come back within the next 2 years with the approval of the planning board. So if there is concern about whether these articles would receive the support of the planning board in the future, and you're trying to essentially, ease their reconsideration at a future meeting, then referring back to committee is a better choice than taking no action or having no motion. So that's for everyone's eyes didn't light up with like, oh, okay, now we got.
I have a question on that. So, how is something actually referred back to committee?
Instead of a positive main motion, or the way that the moderator has acted in the past, where he just says like Article 12 fails for lack of a motion, the finance committee recommendation would be refer back to the planning board or refer to committee, and that would be it.
Oh, so we wouldn't vote to approve the article. We would vote to refer back to committee.
That's right.
And
that
makes
would be
me feel better.
Yeah. And referring to committee, again, especially with zoning, its goal is to essentially provide, to avoid providing a negative action. And so some communities that are thinking about doing this for their town meeting, where they're kind of coming up with a list of things that they feel are essential for action, that they feel are pretty standard and non-controversial and should just be approved, and then those that they think are more controversial and would require debate, etc. And for those, they're saying either refer to committee or take no action or whatever it might be. So it's breaking up the warrant into those items that are critical and can need to be acted on now, like the budget, as compared to articles that aren't critical, but that are routine. So, I mean, that aren't controversial, but that are routine. So that's another category, and that's like accept, state funding for roads and authorize the board of selectmen to enter into compensating balance agreements or whatever. And then there's that last category of articles that do require debate and are controversial, and so those many communities are saying let's put those off until the fall rather than trying to accomplish it at the exact same time as we're trying to hold this either meeting outside or a meeting inside or a remote meeting for those that are representative town meeting towns.
So maybe you can hang on the line here and wait to see what I'm about to do. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Peter.
I vote to reopen Article
16 and 17?
Yeah.
Peter, hold on 1 second. We had a,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
in a
Take that back. Oh, can I revoke my recommendation? Can Amy revoke her second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead, Peter, to revoke.
Yeah. So I I recommend we reopen Article 16, 17.
Hold on, let's take the vote on the revocation of your original
Okay.
vote.
For number 14.
All right, so I'll go through the roll call. Right now we have a motion, original, on approving this article, number 14, I believe it was. So I'll go through the roll. Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Paula? Rick?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Mike? Mike?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm also a yes. Bill, I'm not sure if you're back on.
What about me?
What are we voting?
Oh, wait, Tom.
Yeah, do I get a vote?
Tom.
Yeah.
I'd like a vote too. As long as we're giving them out,
And Bonnie.
So what are we voting?
So we had a recommendation in a second for approving Article 14 as written. This vote we're just taking is revoking that approval.
Okay, revoking the recommendation?
Yeah, so Peter's basically pulling back on his original motion.
Okay.
So now we're starting from square one.
Did I say, Mr. Chairman?
Peter?
I recommend, I'd like to recommend that we reopen Article 16.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to reopen Article 16. Any further discussion before my phone dies again? Hearing none. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
yes.
Walter? Yes. Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick? Yes. And I'm a yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Peter?
I would like to vote no action with a recommendation to go back to committee for Article number 16. Is that the way to do it?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be better just to say refer back to the planning board or refer back to committee.
Well, then that's what I'll say.
Okay. I like it.
Second.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
No one asked if I had any. I was wondering, Lauren, if this means then that no one can move it from the floor. So typically in the past, Bill has said Article 12, like you said, Article 12, seeing no action, the moderator considers it closed for lack of a motion or something like that.
Yep.
So we say we refer it back to committee. Does that mean that then someone else on the floor could still move it?
So, Mr. Chair, if it's okay to respond?
Yes.
In theory, the answer to that is yes. That would be up to town meeting. Most towns that I have been advising and I give out a lot of advice on on town meeting processes, especially right now. In most towns where there has been discussion ahead of time about what and Board of Selectmen or Select Board feels is appropriate to address at town meeting has been okay with that. I think the concept here is that there has to be communication about why these choices are being made as compared to, just kind of putting them out there. So for example, if with Article 16, you voted no action, and so when the article was called, someone else made a motion, I move to approve the article as written. Well, then that's a motion that would be on the floor. Right? Because that's just normally how it is. It's typically the case that when the Finance Committee moves no action, people aren't interested in moving forward anyway. So I don't think it's any different than it is currently, a motion for no action versus a motion to refer to committee. It's just that referring to committee means it could come back to town meeting in the future, even if the planning board doesn't like it.
Well, that's my recommendation
If the question, now that Laura's here, I have a question. I'm just going to repeat my question then. Are we concerned that someone who has this information that we're discussing tonight could come to the meeting with the purpose of moving it, knowing that people weren't expecting to discuss it and get it either passed or failed, without our approval, because they're short-circuiting the system?
Well, I don't know if that question was to me or otherwise, but I'm going to answer it. Those of you who know me know I never mind an opportunity to speak. What I would say to that is parliamentary procedure is always a possibility that people will use parliamentary procedure to do something different than what the town wants or otherwise. You know, again, if the committee makes no recommendation or you know says no action, and the moderator calls for Article 16, for example, and the committee says nothing, well, someone else can make a motion from the floor, and they always could. So it's typical that town meeting will go along with the finance committee's position, although it's not mandatory that they do. So I think as part of the communication that you would send out after you make your recommendations, you would say something like, we're intending to address essential articles that require immediate action. There are several articles that the finance committee, you know, whatever, by itself or in conversation with the select board, have decided are likely to lead to extensive debate and that have not been, you know, fully vetted based on COVID-19 issues. And therefore, the finance committee has recommended for, you know, whatever the number is, that this or that, whatever it is. And so that information is out there. And if someone asks, well, why did the finance committee recommend refer to committee, then that's going to be your opportunity to get up and say, because we didn't get to look at it and we didn't have a chance to vet it the way that we wanted to. And because we didn't want to deprive town meeting of the opportunity to look at it in the future. And so this was the option that this was the course that provided the highest number of options. And that could be the discussion on town meeting floor.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Peter?
So, Lauren, so if as a board, we usually get first dibs at recommending or not recommending something, you know, that's kind of how the process seems to work. So when the moderator says Article 16 and the Finance Committee chimes in and puts a recommendation of back to committee, that would be the vote on the floor, right? So
that's the motion on the floor.
That's the motion on the floor. So someone would have to be able to kill that motion and then make their own to change it. So I think our safest bet, if we want to explain why we're referring to committee, is that is our motion, is to refer to committee, and we speak up and we have our explanation. And I think does that ease your concerns, Walter?
Yes, so does that mean that's what will be printed in the warrant? Exactly what you were saying then, Peter?
Yeah, so in the warrant, we would print, the finance committee recommends back to committee, and then blah, 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 why, COVID, here's blah, blah, blah. And then that one, and that extra statement that someone helps us come up with, or the chairman comes up with, Mr. Chairman, that would be printed under every article that we want to do the same thing to.
But are we still relying on the floor or no one on the floor moving it regardless and ignoring our comment basically?
Our thing on the floor is to go back to committee. So when the moderator says, he says the article, we usually get the first chime in. And our first chime in will be back to committee. So then that is what's going to be debated on the floor about the article.
Right, that will be the main motion.
Great.
I have a separate question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So Lauren, if someone were, let's say, to somehow eke out finance committee and make some sort of motion on the floor besides referring back to committee, someone seconds it because they think that person should have the right to do it, could then, I've seen in the past, the moderator explain to everyone exactly what they're voting on, and then they could choose to vote no. You know what I mean? Like, here's what you're voting on, and vote against that motion.
Yes.
And then it would then be open to other motions?
Then someone else can make a motion. But usually what happens at town meeting is that once a motion is voted down, that's that. So that's typically the result is that, let's say the finance committee recommends funding at whatever level, and someone makes an amendment and that, and so then town meeting discusses and it's voted down. That's typically what happens. People then don't come and make another like a new main motion. It's not that they couldn't, but they don't usually. So, the usual process is for town meeting, the moderator to recognize a member of the finance committee, to read the motion, and then that's what goes to the floor. So if they wanted to amend it, they'd have to make a motion to amend, then that would be subject to discussion, and then that's when all of the information about, why the recommendation was made like it was would be given. And certainly, I am going to be at town meeting. I'm certainly able to stand up and explain that that's that a motion to refer to committee is a way of preserving town meeting's options with respect to zoning amendments. And that's why you guys wound up doing that. You people.
Okay. I think we were at Peter wording a motion.
I made a motion to recommend Article 16 to go back to committee.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to refer to recommend Article 16 back to committee.
I think the wording would be, we don't recommend, we refer back to committee. Recommend seems to imply we approve it as, we're not, a recommendation is.
Right, our recommendation is to refer back to committee. Yes? No?
That's correct.
Okay. And Tom, I think you seconded?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. Go for the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Peter?
I make a motion to reopen Article.
17?
Yeah, sure.
Second. Motion and a second by Tom. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Go for the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Back to you, Peter.
Mr. Chairman, I want to change the committee's recommendation from approval to refer to committee for Article 17, which are the maps.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Tom. Any further discussion? And just to clarify, motion and the second to refer Article 17 back to committee. If no further discussion, go to the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Okay.
The chairman,
Yes.
I think we're back to Article, wish I had them in front of me. The,
14?
14, yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I am on another meeting at the same time, so if you're done with me, I'd be happy to go back to my other meeting. If you have further questions, I'm happy to answer them as well.
Mr. Chair,
Renee?
I'm sorry, Lauren, if I may just ask one question. We had also asked if these articles were withdrawn by the boards that put them forth, what would the impacts or repercussions be?
That's also a good question. So for everything but zoning, if the mover of the article says, I don't want to go forward with this right now, whether because they need more information or because they're waiting for bids or just because they don't want to bring it forward, then that essentially is removing it from action by the body. So if it shows up on another warrant, meaning you push it forward to the next warrant, you would then, the finance committee, for example, would hold a public hearing about that. However, it would not require, except for zoning, that public notice and the mailing and all of that and publication for 2 separate weeks. So only zoning requires that kind of formal notice. Otherwise, it's just what the normal process would be to handle any article.
Okay, so we would still incur a cost if we wanted to withdraw from the warrant now. We would have to go through the whole process again to notify butters and have a public hearing.
For
Or
the
zoning
for the
article.
zoning, you will have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
But at least they can have it without the planning board support, and that's the point of the refer to committee.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In the interest of time, is there any way that the next motion could be for Articles 14, 15, and 18 at once?
I'm hoping.
All right. So I'm gonna go.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Good night, Lauren. Bye.
Thank you. Or,
Mr. Chairman?
Peter?
I don't know how we can do this, but we probably can do it if we said yes, yes, and yes.
Correct.
14, was it 14, 15, and 17, Mike?
14, 15, and 18?
14, 15, and 18. So I would recommend 14, 15, and 18, refer back to committee.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to refer Articles 14, 15, and 18 back to committee. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to the vote. Paula for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18,
Yes.
Bonnie for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18,
Yes.
Walter for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
and 18.
Yes.
Amy for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
and 18.
Yes.
Aaron for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18.
Yes.
Mike for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18.
Yes.
Peter for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18.
Yes.
Tom for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18.
Yes.
Steve for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18.
Yes.
Rick for 14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
18.
Yes.
And I'm a yes for 14, for 15, and for 18. Back to you, Mike.
Okay. If we could go to Article 13, it's a prior year bill. for the Sun Chronicle, $605.30. And that would come out of the department's existing budget.
That was 13?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve Article 8, Article 13 in the amount of $605.30.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Article 13. What was the amount?
$605.30.
$605.30. And that's for the Sun Chronicle?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Go to the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, makes it unanimous. Okay. Mike?
Article 3. This is retirement expense. And looking for $185,735 to cover 5 retirements, sick leave, buyback, and vacation, 2 in the police department, 2 in the fire department, and 1 in the communications department. This becomes
Mike,
free cash.
Mike, it was brought to my attention today, and it could be different, that there's money based on what James gives us every month for separation expenses. Is this different than that?
No, this would go into that.
So on top of I thought I heard there's like 130,000-ish. We would be adding another 187,000-ish.
Well, $185,735.
On top of what's in there.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do. I didn't see it in the breakdown, Mike, but it did break down the component. Vacation, buyback, sick time.
Yes, let me find it.
And what's the maximum number of weeks of either sick time or vacation they're buying back? And what union contract is it under?
1 is the fire contract, 2 of them are in the fire contract, 2 of them are in the police contract, and 1 is in the C to B contract. So in the fire department, it's they're both 2 sick leave buybacks. In the police department, 2 of them are getting vacation, and 1 is getting some sick buyback. And in communications, it's sick buyback.
So obviously, to Bill's point earlier, these were unknown when we started the budget process last year.
Correct.
And then is there a dollar breakdown that tells us the cost of each level? If it's quickly available, okay. If not, I understand.
Yeah, no, so in the police department, the 2 vacations, 1 is $18,000, the other one is $17,700. And the sick buyback is $75,000. In the communications, the sick buyback is $19,450. In the fire department, They're both sick buyback, 27,305 and 27,400.
How much time does that represent, Mike?
That I don't have with me. I forgot my budget book when I was coming home with everything, so I don't have how many days that is in front of me.
And I would have to, if you ever wanted to restrict or reduce the maximum amount, they would have to go through union negotiations, right?
Correct.
It just seems like an awful lot of money that, I know it's in the contract, but we should be a little bit more aware of what these costs are. I mean, that's I forgot the number, $180,000 additional that's gonna impact the budget.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that
I'm
Amy?
wondering, yes, so I'm just wondering how much we generally keep in that bucket, for lack of a better description, for separation expenses, and wouldn't we use some of that to defray this cost?
We could use some of that. I know the town accountant's concern was that the auditors suggested that we leave money in that account and start building it some more money into it, because when we get hit and we don't have any money available, that's an obligation we've got to address.
Amy, did that answer your question?
I mean, it answers the question. It just, from a kind of logical perspective, it seems like we put money into stabilization, we put money into FinCom reserve, we put money into a whole bunch of different places that we can take money from if we need it. This is sort of a strange spot to store $135,000 just to have it be there. On the off chance we might need it, and then we end up needing more than that much anyway, so I'm just kind of wondering the rationale. But, I mean, I understand what Mike said.
Yeah, you know, the concern is because, like I said, you know, just a sick buyback of $78,850, it goes quick.
Right.
Mr. Chairman? I have a question for Mike. Mike, so I assume that the amounts are calculated on the rate they were when they earned the vacation, not at the rate they are now?
Well, the vacation would be, they can't keep carrying vacation, so vacation would be current.
Okay,
So everyone earns their vacation, so these payouts will be for vacation that they earned this year that they would have been using last year.
Right, but what about the sick buyback? Is that at the rate?
It's at their current rate.
So if you were making $1.50 an hour back when you started, and you save some of these days and you're about to retire, I mean, unrealistic here, but then, and you're making $10 an hour now, we're actually paying them back at their current rate for stuff they earned at a much different rate.
Correct.
Boy, that stinks, man.
And is there I'm going to guess based on that number, there is no cap?
Most contracts do have caps, other than, I'm not sure what the police and fire cap is, but other contracts all have caps. But like in most contracts, you can accumulate up to 180 days of sick time and get 50% buyback at the end when you retire from Bristol County Retirement. So you get paid for 90 of the 180 days.
So at 70 some odd thousand, is that what this was? Pretty much the max?
That would be in one of the contracts where they didn't have a max.
How many contracts like that do we have left?
Two.
Is that two individuals or two classes of people?
Two classes.
Which entails how many people roughly?
70.
Right. Okay. That's a lot of uncapped potential. Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Aaron?
Hi, thanks. Mike, so what happens if we say no to this? What does that look like?
It will cost you lawyers' fees and interest.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
I'd like to make a motion. I'm sorry, what article number is this?
3.
I'd like to make a motion to approve article number 3, please.
Second. I have a motion and a second by Tom to recommend Article 3, and I lost in my chicken scratch, what is that, 185,735?
Correct.
Ouch. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Go to the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Mike?
just to clarify, I did check while you were voting. Police and fire, they get 180 days, but they don't have the 50%. So they're getting the full 180 days, not 90.
Okay. Okay. Ouch.
And next is the West Main Street sewer line
Yeah.
project.
So before we get into the fun, and this will, ultimately kill my phone for the evening. Did I read correctly in the information that was sent last week that they don't really need us to vote more money, they just need authorization to spend more money? Did I read that correctly? Because they had money from other sources to cover that difference?
So, Mike, I can talk to that, if that's okay. So this is Steve Peterson with Weston and Sampson. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
So the point of that, and I did put together a PowerPoint for tonight, a short one that we can go through, but one of the slides talks to this. So the issue is that we have, all the previous articles have been authorization to borrow and to spend. So we have authorization of 5.7 million in both of those areas. Within that, we have non-borrowing revenue sources, so there's money coming in to offset that doesn't need to be borrowed to the full amount. So with the current authorization, we We don't need additional borrowing authorization, we have enough, but we still need the authorization to spend. So we still need authorization, but does that make sense? Or am I not explaining it well?
No, after I read the information that, I think Mike forwarded to us at the last meeting, and I'm reading it going, okay, they don't really want the town to borrow more money, but they do need the town to agree that you guys can spend more money. And so it put it in a slightly different light for me, not by much, but a slightly easier thing to swallow because of that, there was funding from other sources.
And I can certainly get into that.
So, this is Pete, so, I don't understand it, so.
How about we put the PowerPoint up?
Good.
And then I can get to that in one of the slides.
Yep.
So let me see if I can do this. So I should have the ability to share, right?
You should.
All right, so share screen. Did that come up?
Yes.
So then if I go slideshow from begin. So instead of skipping to that slide, do you mind if I just kind of go through the first few? That's a couple of slides down, and we'll talk more about the borrowing versus spending. I guess just to start, I kind of took over. I know Luke is on the line. Luke, you're good with me running with this at this point?
Yes, please go ahead, Steve.
Okay. So obviously, we were before you last week. You asked us to come back with a little bit more detailed information. So a couple of emails came out with some questions. We did send back some responses to those questions this afternoon. And then I also put this PowerPoint together. So this will cover some of the questions that were answered in those emails in a little bit of detail, but there's more detail in some of those emails if you need that information. But let's just walk through this. I won't spend a lot of time. There's a total of 9 slides here, so I'm hopefully not going to take a lot of your time. It's more about your questions. It is important to remember, what started this and what brings us, to where we are now. I know we've all talked about this ad nauseum. This started with the need for the housing authority. They were going to they needed a solution. They were going to build a treatment plant. They wanted to utilize those funds in a different way if they could. They tried to partner with the school department and bring their flow to the middle school, treatment plant at the middle school. That was denied by the DEP because they're already having trouble meeting permit with the current situation that the schools have. So that was the start of the project. The Water and Sewer Commission had completed a comprehensive wastewater management plan. We had done phase 1 of the project, which is the pump station down at Wheaton. The next phase of the project was intended to be the sewer in this area. It was going to be a few years out. It accelerated based on the timing and the needs and the collaboration, basically. So the first, this all came to light, I believe, a couple weeks before either town meeting or before the articles were due for town meeting that this was going to happen. So the first article, the number came right out of the comprehensive wastewater management plan, the planning level costs of what this piece of the sewer extension would include. As you're aware, there have been 2 other articles since. Once we had the opportunity to get through at least the preliminary design and get a better feel for some of the challenges that were going to be in this area, the price was augmented. When we went to bid, and the basic explanations that were given before on this one, the biggest thing when we went to bid was the bid climate that we hit. All projects were coming in way over original estimates. So post-bid, we augmented it with more money to cover the bids. And so now, unfortunately, we're here to talk about additional money based on where we are now with the project and what we've run into. So this is the slide, and we're talking about 1.1 million, which you're already aware of because we talked about it last week. So the first point being that the previous articles that add up to the 5.7 million are articles that give the town the authorization to borrow 5.7 million and to spend 5.7 million. So as part of the project costs, the town is receiving additional revenue sources where they don't have to borrow the money. So they're getting money from DHCD to the tune of like 1.8 million, and then they're getting principal forgiveness from the SRF, meaning there's a certain portion, it's a little over $100,000 off of the SRF loan that does not need to be paid back. So those are monies that don't need to get borrowed. So it's close to 2 million that never goes on to a loan that needs to get paid back. Those are monies that are already given to the town and in the till to pay for the project. So that additional authorization does not require additional borrowing, but we still don't have the authorization to spend more than 5.7. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I know this seems to be a question.
Did that explain it?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Because why is it called additional project funding request of 1.1 million when it's
spending? Spending would be the right word. Additional project spending.
So why would we have why would we need 1.1 million to spend 1.1 million more? Let me finish. So if we let you spend 1.1 million more, if we didn't, then when this project is done, we'd get 1.1, we wouldn't have to borrow that.
We just have that, we wouldn't have borrowed the full 5.7 that we currently have authorization to borrow. We wouldn't have had to borrow the full amount.
Okay.
So, something that can be paid from, basically cash contributions, or money that's been paid and is in the Water and Sewer Commission's account, or the enterprise.
So then I ask the next question. Why did we need an extra 1.5 million added to the top? Instead, why did they ask for the 1.5 million more to borrow when they only needed really 400,000 more to borrow?
Okay. So but
yeah, well, I was going to say, the way I remember this project being presented was, let's start at the beginning. 3.3 million was the cost. However, Meadows and whatever else had like 700,000 or 800,000 that they were gonna chip in. So therefore, it was always sold to us that the true cost to the town was, 2.5. if I'm remembering this correctly. And as each, year went by and the price went up, the true cost to the town was always, 4.5 minus, or 5.7 minus, whatever those other monies were. So at this point, I think you're now presenting it that the true cost for the town is going to be 5.7 million, and there's additional money that will pay for the 1.1 in incremental costs. Is that is that kind of a different way of looking at it? So there's no longer 5.7 minus is the cost of the town. The cost of the town now is 5.7.
I didn't get it. Sorry.
What?
I kind of get it. It's sort of taking me a while to kind of digest the way the numbers are presented. I don't. It's not clear to me what piece of these numbers was actually put forth and we couldn't spend it. So if that 1.1 is only to spend 1.1 million more, what part of the 3.32 or 880 or 1.5 was money that we allowed to borrow but couldn't spend?
Okay, so all the money you were allowed to borrow, you couldn't have borrowed. Yeah, I guess it could have been presented at a previous article this way. It's just more pointing out than anything that, we still need more money to be able to spend. The project is costing more money. It's not changing. That's the main issue. But I'm just saying that based on the borrowing authorizations that you previously got, you already have the authorization to borrow. But you still need the authorization to spend it.
Mr.
So
Chairman?
we didn't need to confuse it.
Is that
Steve, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, it's Luke. I think what we did initially, because the housing authority was so iffy on their amounts and their commitment, I think we went out and got the authorization to borrow all that fund. And when the DHCD or the state came in with their very generous contribution, that, so to speak, came off the top. Now, with the factors that have led us to need 1.1 million more, it's pretty much the amount the state is giving us that will be factored onto the back side of this project, if that helps.
So again, Luke, as I said, the true cost to the town now is 5.7 million.
Correct.
Right.
Maybe if I say it this way, I don't know, maybe if I say it clearly. So we essentially have approved 5.7 million to be able to borrow. But in approving that borrowing amount, we didn't approve that we could spend all that much money. We only approved that we could spend 1.1 less of the 5.7, 4.6. Is that right?
No, I think we approved their ability to borrow and spend 5.7 million. So now they're looking for the ability to borrow 5.7 million, but to spend 6.8 million.
Right.
That's clearer to me. Thank you.
So I'll revert back to my key my key problem last week which was, how can you assure us that this is it?
Yep. So we can walk through this and talk about the numbers. I go into a little more detail on where the numbers come from and the conservatism, or whatever you want to use, built into it. So one of the questions was, number of properties connected. So when this project is complete, there'll be a total of 54 connections, which is 106 betterment units, or equivalent dwelling units. And that comes into the cost, the payback of the project afterwards. So just broke it out here in terms of how the properties break out. With 23 commercial properties, 15 single-family residential homes, 12 multi-unit residential. And then we obviously have the housing authority, and then there's 3 school properties, the 2 schools and the school administration building. So that's a breakout of who's being served currently. Now this is, as we mentioned, this is the next phase of the needs areas that were established in the comprehensive wastewater management plan. So ultimately, there'll be a total of 700 properties that are connected further along 123 and up Freeman Street around the reservoir that will ultimately be serviced by this project based on future extensions. So the project includes 6,500 feet of gravity sewer, and we've installed 3,000 to date, so we have 3,500 feet remaining.
At 3,500.
That's what's left for sewer, yeah, but it's 3,500 feet. So the crux behind the cost increases, and so I went into a little more detail on some of this because these were the real questions you were asking. So I'm going to read a little bit from the email I sent earlier in terms of a little bit more detail here on the cost increases. So the biggest thing that's driving the additional costs is the amount and the nature of the rock encountered, as well as the means and methods available to remove the rock. Additional rock has been encountered beyond the anticipated quantity estimated. So we are seeing more rock. Our original rock quantity in the as-bid documents was 2,000 yards and 6,500 foot length. So to date, they've excavated and been paid for 1,000 yards of rock. And like I said, in which time they installed 3,000 feet of sewer. So they put in 46% of the sewer, and they've removed 50% of the rock. Now the rock in the earlier sections, so basically the sewer that we've installed to date is all this pipe on Wheaton College, Fillmore Drive, Howard, and then out to Taunton Ave, and then through the intersection of Taunton and Mansfield out onto West Main Street. The rock on Taunton Ave was predominantly boulders. There were a lot of them. They were more readily removed through mechanical means, but we definitely pulled out more boulders than we anticipated in those areas. In the current location where we are now, they've encountered solid ledge. So it's gone from boulders to where they're dealing with solid ledge. We're definitely in the most difficult part of the job. We talked about this last week, I think. So where we are now, the sewers are 16 feet deep, and the ledge is being counted about a foot below grade in the current location. So, the borings definitely indicated rock through this area. The depth of the rock, specifically, in between the borings or just in general, has proven to be even shallower than anticipated based on the borings.
And if I may interrupt to potentially speed this up a little bit, The issue last week, from my perspective, was if you
Hello, Bill? Bill? He said his phone was gonna die, didn't he?
It did.
He did.
Bill?
It just can't
He
present.
guaranteed this would ride his phone into battery failure.
what?
He did say,
Say that again.
Oh, you're back.
Come back, Bill!
Who's back?
He's back!
Say that comment again. What about battery failure? What?
Well, your phone cut out after you said my question is, and then you were gone.
Oh. So last week, the issue was that you bore every 300 feet. You're encountering significant ledge and rock every inch. How are we going to convince the townspeople that we know that from this point forward, or from 50 feet forward, we don't have ledge? How do we get to reassuring the public that, we're not going to be back asking for more money, even though we're not asking for money this time? How do we get there?
So, I mean, that's what I went on to say here, I guess, is that, we ran the numbers, a couple of different ways going forward with the information we now have, with some more assumptions, that in between the borings that we have, the rock is going to come up in places, most of them. So we ran a couple of different scenarios, and we've got a remaining rock estimated between 1,500 and 3,000 yards. And the 3,000 yards is very conservative based on hitting it at shallow depths, shallower than what's been in it. I will say that as, construction progresses, sewer depths are going to decrease gradually. And for the final 2,000 feet of the sewer, we're only 6 to 8 feet deep, which is obviously a lot easier to predict in terms of the ledge. It's the deep cut that's proving to be challenging. So our estimate to complete in the 1.1 million is based on 3,000 yards remaining, which would result in a final rock quantity of 4,000 yards.
But didn't you just say 2 minutes ago that you were hitting the ledge at, a foot under the ground? So it doesn't sound like it's getting any easier, even though the depth you ultimately have to dig isn't, 14 feet. It's going to go, 10, 8, 6. But if you're still hitting ledge, it's still, slow.
And that's what the 3,000 yards assumes, that we're going to continue to hit it at these shallow depths.
And so short of a money back guarantee, you're basically saying that this is the worst case scenario and we should be a penny over?
We are, yes.
And someone wants to say that in front of the townspeople?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah?
Steve, I think you were answering a question, sorry.
Go ahead.
Who actually reviews these estimates and change orders and things like that? The town actually sees the actual process. And the part two of that is, what happens if you didn't get the additional funding? What happens to the project?
If we didn't get the additional funding?
Correct. And the second part of that is, who reviews?
Let's skip ahead, all right? Is everyone?
Who reviews the cost estimates? in the town?
So the information, has to be vetted through the state, so the DEP through the SRF, because they're funding the project, they review all the plans and specs and cost estimates. You know, at the town level, you know, we're running it by the Water and Sewer, Commission.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah?
I have a question. So back on the slide before, you had the indication of, can you go back a couple slides? Next one, right there. You have additional rock beyond estimated quantity. Can we get some numbers of like what the initial estimate quantity was and what the additional estimate is? Does it mean, you know, if the initial
I said that, yeah, I can repeat that. So we estimated 2,000 yards. We put in 46% of the pipe and pulled out 1,000 yards to date of the 2,000 yard estimate. And that's 50% of the rock, 46% of the pipe. And we're estimating another 3,000 yards going forward on our most conservative, our conservative estimate. So another 3,000 on top of the 1,000 that's been removed. It's a lot of rock for the remaining area.
So it's gonna be double what your first estimate was?
It is. Hopefully it's not. We're putting
Is that Tom?
Estimate.
Yeah.
It'll be 4,000.
A simple question, since I go past that project every day, okay, and I think they moved since last week 100 feet.
Yeah.
At that rate, it'll take months to finish the project. Question, how much does it cost you a day, and what is your projection for the completion of the project? How much a day are you spending, and how many days is it going to be until you reach the end of your project? I mean, I hear a lot about stone, and I hear a lot about downhill, uphill, sideways. What's the cost per day? Multiply that times the number of days you're projecting to finish the project, and then I'd be comfortable with a number. Right now, I'm hearing a lot about this and that and the other thing. When is your projected completion date? Okay, and how much are you spending a day?
So
somebody should know.
What's that? Yeah, so we're projecting about 30 weeks. So that takes us into November.
That's a little less than 10 months.
That's right.
And how much are you spending a day?
So a week, and so I did it based on a week. The police are running about 10,000 a week. Oversight and other miscellaneous costs run about 5,000. So that's the stuff that's controlled by production. Contractor is paid based on his unit, the unit prices of the materials and, you know, the stuff that he installs and removes. So his prices varies. You know, that varies from day to day.
Okay.
But those are all in. Go ahead.
So that's 450K on the details for 30 weeks. Between the details and you said 10K for the police and 5K for something else, and that doesn't include what the contract.
Correct.
Right?
And that is in the email that I sent today, the detail on that. So I can be even more specific.
No, I don't know. You're close enough. I just want to know. I was just figuring it. Moving the way you're moving, I was pretty close. You did move about 100 feet this week. Based on your 30-week projection, that's about right. That takes you to 3,000 feet.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You want me to continue?
Do others have more questions, more to hear? heard enough.
So we can go to someone had asked about if we stop. I mean, obviously there's cost to bear. There's an incomplete project. So if we just were to terminate and we didn't have the money to finish, we would lose the contribution from the Norton Housing Authority. You know, they've already contributed $760,000 and there's another $1 million to come. There's SRF reimbursements that have been received to date, $2.9 million. Those would still need to be paid back. We wouldn't have any betterments as part of the cost to pay that back because we wouldn't be tying people in. The Norton schools would have to do something with the treatment plant at the middle school, as well as the housing authority would have to do a treatment plant at their site. So we would be back to having the 2 treatment plants on 123. We'd have to decommission the pump station that's out there. There'd be contract termination and settlement costs to close out the contract. We wouldn't have the ability for the future extensions under the CWMP to do. And if the project does get resurrected at a future date, it would obviously be resurrection cost. So,
Hey, Steve,
there's a lot at stake. What's that?
Steve, may I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Hey, the very thing that I want to point out at this point, and we all know the water table is high and generally in our town, and in this particular part of town, the soils are very bad, but the ledge that we're hitting is not just in the road, ladies and gentlemen. The ledge is throughout this entire area, and that does not allow the water from septic systems to flow and perk into the groundwater rapidly and or for a long time. This is why this area needs the sewer. A lot of systems from some of the houses, obviously the housing authority system's in failure because that is a huge producer of wastewater. It needs a solution, not a quick solution, not a cheap solution. And I know this is painful. Nobody's more concerned and upset about this overrun than I am. Each time we've come to you, we have the best information we can gather and we put it out there and you know, without drilling, like I said last time, every 50 feet, we don't know, you know, what's ahead of us. But I will remind you that the very ledge that is here that we're fighting is also not good for septic systems. So this is beneficial to the town as an aquifer and to protect the groundwater. In addition, the businesses along 123 can access the sewer and our town can thrive and grow that way. Thank you.
But Luke, going back to what we discussed last week, if it only costs, I think you estimated $50,000 to get a better handle that this is what you're going to hit for the remaining, you know, remaining feet of the project versus kind of winging it. Not that you're winging it, but best guess versus clear information. You know, that there's not a lot of tolerance to see you guys again begging for money.
I appreciate that. I just, at this point, you know, before it was not as clear as it is now. I guess we're playing some Monday morning football, but I believe, and before, and I even more strongly believe now, the $50,000 is better spent on police details and progress than drilling rock that we already know is there.
You know is there, but you don't know how much. So,
you know, absolutely. No, I didn't put it there. You didn't put it there. It's there, and we're gonna dig right through it. You know, that's what we have to do.
As I stated earlier, before or during my phone cutting off, are you willing to stand in front of the town meeting saying, I guarantee no more requests,
No one can do that.
then I'm not sure that the $50,000 is better spent somewhere else. That's my concern.
I don't think, so the 50,000 still isn't gonna give you a guarantee. I understand what you're asking, I totally get it. But you're still not gonna dig up every spot. You'll give you better information. We might be able, in my estimation, we would hopefully bring this number down a little bit. If we did that work, we would bring the amount needed down. So in the end, if we don't spend it, if we don't need it, we won't spend it. We're trying to do what we did the last two times and not have to come back. And I understand why you're asking the question.
And please
Guarantee
also
us we're not gonna have to come back again. I get that.
Also remember, there are police details for the drilling that happened. The 50 was an estimate of the drilling, not for police details, not for engineering oversight. I mean, there's a lot of add-ons that go with it.
Okay, when I asked last week, the 50,000 was your guesstimate as to what that would entail. So now you're changing that answer.
Yeah,
So that doesn't help in this conversation, and that is what continues to happen. It's a half an answer, 3/4 of an answer, not fully thought out answer, and then we're back asking for money. This town needs assurances and not best guess, half-assed answers. And that's what you're not giving me at the moment.
But wait a minute, if we spend the $50,000 to get a better number, it's not gonna decrease the cost. The cost is gonna be the same whether we spend $50,000 to find the cost, or if we just take the 101 hit, or 1,000,001 hit, and just return any money we don't use. So I don't understand what spending $50,000 is gonna do to reduce the cost of anything. Seems to me, it's not gonna give us any better information. We gotta just spend it on drilling.
I think the concern may be that we're gonna be at the fall town meeting in October with another warrant article asking for another $1 million in cost overruns. I think
Exactly.
that's what Bill is trying to avoid.
Yeah, well, but I agree, but we can't be guaranteed. Nobody's gonna make that guarantee. Even if we spend the $50,000, they could still come back and say, we were short. So I'm not sure where the $50,000 is gonna stay.
If you're originally testing at 300 feet, there's a lot of earth in between 300 feet. If you're testing at 50 feet, then you have a better idea right off the top whether that 1,000,001 is gonna cover it, or gee, that's not even gonna do it. We need more.
Mr. Chairman,
Because as Tom indicated last week, this is Norton's big dig, and the price keeps going up, and up.
And by the way, Bill, we won't be finished with this project until this time next year, okay? Because
Exactly.
They're saying 10 months, and then you realize we shut down into State Road, you're gonna shut down from November to probably March.
I didn't want to comment on that, but, you know.
But it's gonna keep, it's not gonna be finished tomorrow, so you're talking about at least a year before we ever see any sewage get pumped up into the pumping station.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I have two quick questions.
Yep.
My first question is, are we saving any money right now being able to work during the day instead of at night?
Yes. Yes, I mean, the contractor's, production, is better during the day. He's struggling right now where he is, because now they switched to days, and they're in the worst part of the job. But absolutely, working during the day, and they've currently been given a better window of time to work so that they can be more productive on a daily basis, not limited to 8 hours or less.
Okay, well, we'll take our wins where we can get them. The second question I have is probably more for Mike. I thought we had to approve the borrowing for the total amount, whether we were going to actually borrow it or not. I seem to remember that from the window project and a couple of other things, that we can't just assume the other sources of funding as we're progressing. Can I get some clarification on that, please?
Excuse me, that would be my recommendation, just in case.
So, the article is written that way. The article is written just like the other ones were, for authorization to borrow and spend.
Mr. Chairman? Pete? So I have a couple statements. One is, I don't know if I will ever believe an estimate for any project again. I mean, I don't know who comes up with the original estimate. It has to go out to bid. It's going to be the lowest bid. I don't think I'm going to ever believe anyone again. Sorry, not to be whatever, but like, this one's going to come up to be double what someone first thought it was. So, I mean, I go to buy a car, and if it's double the cost, I'm not buying a dang blasted car. I don't go in $10,000, I come out with $20,000 car. So, and number two is, I don't think we're going to get any money back from this. Even if we give them another 1.1, oh, we won't spend it if it's not there. Old cookies, it's going to be spent. That's my statement. All that.
Well, I mean, money has to be spent on the project and documented. I mean, if the costs aren't on the project, then it won't be spent. I mean, I guess it's what you said.
They'll find a way to be documented to the project. I can guarantee.
Okay.
Have we ever gotten any money back from our project?
Followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
What would happen if we voted?
After the tone, please record it. When you have finished recording, press pound. You are in the meeting now. There are more than 20 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
What would happen if we voted no action?
Please mute your phone.
So Steve, you had a question?
Oh, God.
There's feedback, Bill. It sounds like it's coming from you.
No.
My question is, what would happen if we voted right now to take it out?
What was the question? I'm sorry. If you.
I'm just asking, I guess, Mike Units, what would be the impact of voting no action on this right now for this town meeting?
If you vote no action, then they can't move forward if they don't have, if the contractor doesn't know the money's is gonna be there, he can't move forward. So you delay the project, and I don't know what the prospect is for prices in the future, whether they're gonna be higher or not.
We're basically stuck right now, and
Right.
Look at who in the town would get involved to make sure that these overruns stop happening, to oversee the project from a project management standpoint. I know we send it to the state, but it appears right now the controls in place are non-existent or not being adhered to, and it's just driving up more and more expense that we continually have to go back to the townspeople to discuss. So one of those, how would we avoid this in the future? Who would get involved? And what controls would we put in place to stop this from happening again?
The only way you have to control the cost and the operation of the job is the super on the job and the pre-engineering. So obviously, this was an unforeseen incident with the rock, and that's nothing you can do after that.
On top of the rock, folks, there was unknown utilities. The state road, one of our oldest roads in town, 123, had literally stacked and next to each other duct banks on top of rock, underground electrical duct banks. And the same thing happened on Wheaton campus. Wheaton's a very old campus. Utilities were put in the ground without ties, we call them in the excavation world, locations from corners of buildings and whatnot. So the contractor was totally digging blind on Wheaton. Some of the stuff they knew about, but if you take the rock close to grade and the unknown utilities, it's a very challenging thing, which even those of us in the excavation world find it impossible to estimate. You can throw a number at it, which is what was done, based on the borings, and mind you, the borings sometimes hit these unknown utilities. You throw it right through a duct bank. It's very challenging, and I understand your frustration. And again, I'm frustrated as well. It's just this has been a perfect storm of old, uncharted utilities, a narrow band of the road to go through. A lot of the other utilities were installed in, I'm going to say, more forgiving parts of the road, and for good reason. But here we are, and as Steve Peterson has said, we have a conservative estimate. Is it perfect? At this point, we believe it's the best thing we can do given the information we have. It should carry us through. There are no perfect guarantees in the underground world.
So Luke, you've just opened me up to another frustration that not only are we with uncharted rock, but now you still have, 3,000 feet of potentially uncharted utilities.
The utilities, yeah.
So does the 1.1 million cover that frustration?
To the best of our knowledge, yes. The uncharted utilities were for the complex intersection that has been changed over the years. So there's no more real, big intersections. There's a couple of side roads, but it's not like the intersection of 140 and 123.
But if we look at this, and I apologize, but even if we were to stop this project now, the costs to get out of it are almost what we've put into it already. Is that right? If I looked at that schedule you had about termination costs, it's almost confirming that we're stuck.
Right, and if you look at the big picture, we have a contract, and I know a little bit about contract law. The contract is gonna, if we stop, file a lawsuit. Whether they win or not, it costs us legal fees, time, and at the end of the day, we probably spend as much money and we really don't get anything. If we take the pain of some extra money and it boils down to a small extra amount on our annual payback, so you break it all the way back down to an annual amount, and we have this project completed, at least we have something to show for the overspending that we've done.
Is there a way to put any cost estimates? So when we look at, obviously the first two are hard solved. So we're looking at almost 1.6, 1.7, let's just say without the 1,760,000, we have almost another 3, right? So there's 3.7, almost 4. But if the ones that are just bullet points, what would the potential cost be? Or are they not known? I just keep looking at this as this is not the best scenario, but I don't know if we have an option to get out. I hate to say it.
I agree, Steve. I said it last week. We're waist deep in this, and the only way to get out of it is to keep slogging forward.
I think that's unfortunate.
So Based on the email today, there was a section I didn't quite understand, which was this project of, what's it going up to now, 6.8 million or something? Is that taxpayer funded or ultimately water, sewer, basically sewer funded? Who's paying that back?
Steve, do you have the breakdown? Who must have lost Steve?
I see his screen, I just can't hear his voice.
You're muted.
Yeah, he's muted.
Hey, Steve, are you with us?
Got on mute. Probably having phone problems like me. So, I guess this is the part I didn't understand. Who's paying? I see the schools are paying. I see some forgiveness.
Can you hear me?
We can.
It keeps saying the host has muted me. I don't know, and I keep clicking it and unmuting it, and then it says the host has muted you. So I'm blaming you, Mike.
All right.
Well,
Did I
I
stop
think
sharing?
I think everybody's heard enough of us, Steve, but we're gonna ask one more question.
So have I stopped sharing? I think I had to stop sharing.
No, you're still there.
I'm still sharing. Okay, so the project costs are being funded through a number of sources. The big thing we keep talking about is the money from DHCD between their construction share and their sewer connection fee. Tax money, through the schools portion of it based on the flows from the schools into the system. And that's coming out of taxes. We've got the sewer betterments. I mentioned the principal forgiveness. That's some of the monies that doesn't need to get borrowed. We're using money from the annual payments to Norton, the APN. Those are the monies that get paid for the MFN, Mansfield, Foxborough, Norton plant, for Norton being the host community. So those are all the different sources. And there was an attachment on that email that kind of broke it down with the numbers. But at this point, there's nothing specifically on the sewer users themselves. It's all on these other costs.
But when it's all said and done, and it's hooked up, and it's just a distant memory, who's paying then?
So when the borrowing goes long term and we're paying back the loan?
Yeah.
So it's all of those sources. It's we have the money that's collected from betterments, which is about 1.7 million. We got 1.7 million from the school's contribution. And again, the monies from the DHCD have defrayed the costs.
And DHCD stands for?
Department of Housing and Community Development. It's a state agency. That's who funds the Norton Housing Authority.
Okay.
So it's from a variety of sources. I mean, the town as a whole is benefiting ultimately from this project, and that's the money that comes out of through the school share.
But you said $1.7 million is sewer betterments. Is that just the 3,500, 4,000 feet, whatever? Is it those people and those people only? Or is it everybody on the sewer system?
No, so the betterments are specific so that's the cost of the people that are improved by this specific project. So everybody that's fronted, and getting a connection gets assessed a number of betterment units. And one, single family home gets charged one betterment unit. Multi-unit residential get charged one betterment unit per unit, and the commercials are based on water use, and it's equated to a single family home.
But, so again, I guess I go back to my question of last year. The average payer, what happens to their bill? Is it $5? Is it $20? Is it $100?
He's asking about the current sewer users, Steve. I don't believe there's an impact on those currently connected in past projects.
But the 54 connections you're about to make,
Okay, those people, yes.
those people, what happens to their bill? Their new bill? What is that gonna look like?
So the
Because that's-
betterment assessment is 16,000 is what the betterment has been established at. And they have 20 years to pay that. They can apportion that over 20 years. And then once they're connected, and that's paid, that's assessed at the time that the construction is complete. Anyone who's fronted, bettered by the sewer is assessed a betterment.
So,
Then they start paying user fees after they're connected to the sewer.
Yep, so $800 just to connect, just for the betterment. $800 a year for 20 years.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
And then it's, then there's a connection fee, and then there's the usage fee. And I thought it was indicated last year, maybe I'm wrong, that, if your water bill is 100, then your water sewer is 200. It's like double.
It's less.
Okay.
It's a little less. It's not a lot less. You're pretty close.
Okay.
Any other questions, I guess?
So, is there any interested party to make a motion?
Chairman,
Steve?
I'm not enthused, but as I said earlier, the exit cost is gonna be a lot more. So I will make a motion to recommend Article, I don't have the article number in front of me.
Mike, what article is this?
I'm looking right now, it's Article 10.
Go to Article 10 as written.
I will second. This is Aaron.
So we have a motion and a second to recommend Article 10, which in essence is asking for an additional 1.1 million on top of the 5.7 million already allocated for borrowing and spending. So a total of 6.8 million for this project. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. The vote. Paula,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Amy,
Yeah, I guess so.
Aaron,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Peter,
I don't want it to be unanimous, so I'm gonna say no. That's the only reason.
Tom,
Yes.
Steve,
I'll be a yes also, but disappointed in the cost overruns.
Rick, Rick, did we lose you?
It's on mute.
Yes.
I'm gonna join Peter in a no. So, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if you, this
Is
is,
that Steve?
yes, Steve or Luke, will this PowerPoint be available at the town meeting in some format? And if it is, I'd like to see again the exit costs laid out the best we can for those 5 or 6 bullet points with no dollar amounts.
That makes sense.
I would ask Mike, I guess, about PowerPoint. I don't know, does anybody know at this point what's gonna be available or how it's gonna go? We can certainly present it.
I'll let you know, you're probably gonna need a handout.
I was gonna say, right, I think we need physical copies, Steve.
Gotta add some pictures in. Pretty boring.
Put together some sort of one pager. You'll be fine. Trust me, nobody's going to town meeting for the excitement value.
Maybe both sides.
For an additional 1.1 million, I think it'd be color gloss.
Yeah.
Well, then it's gonna be
We're trying to save costs.
1 million, 5,000.
Boy. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Right?
All right, Mike.
Okay. There's only 3 more articles. Article 17 is the water bodies. And right now, we have money to cover what will be done this spring and summer. So, right now, we don't need to put any money in the account till the fall, so, we don't need any action on that article. That's Article 12.
Mr. Chairman?
That Article 12?
Yes.
I just want to get the article on the score sheet. It has 16, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it on the handout. It's Article 12, if it's raise and appropriate transfer for watershed plan for 3 bodies of water. Is that the one?
Yes.
Okay, that's Article 12.
Mr. Chairman,
Steve?
I vote to recommend no action on Article 12.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Amy for no action on Article 12. Any further discussion? Hearing none, go to the vote. Paula? Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Article 4, collective bargaining. I don't have any agreements, for you to, approve on that article yet, so there would be no action as of now.
Mr. Chairman,
Steve,
I recommend no action on Article 4, the collective bargaining agreements.
Second.
have a motion and a second by Amy for no action on Article 4, collective bargaining agreements. Any further discussion? Hearing none, go to the vote. Paul?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
And the last article is Article 8, the budget.
Do we have to have a number?
I've got it if you need it. Or I can just move it.
If you're accurate on the number, Amy, I'd probably just move it.
All right, Mr. Chairman. I move that we recommend Article 8, the 2021 fiscal year budget, in the total amount of $60,818,873.
Second that, Mike, is that the correct number?
Yes.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second by Steve to vote the 2021 budget of $60,818,873. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Go to the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so it's unanimous. Okay. Mike?
That's it. The only other question I have, you probably don't need to meet this Wednesday.
Okay.
The only thing that you'd possibly have to meet for next Monday would be if we were able to come to agreement on any contracts, but I'd let you know that.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. So we cancel this Wednesday.
Yep.
And you'll let me know
By Thursday.
by Thursday if we need the following Monday.
Yep.
And normally in the times of old, you know, we normally have that loved meeting before the town meeting with the written out recommendations and all that, and what to say, what not to say type thing. How am I getting that?
We'll draft the recommendations and email them to you tomorrow, so you can review those.
And that's what I'm supposed to be reading.
Yeah.
And so Lauren has already looked at it and all that kind of stuff.
We'll get everything to her. So we'll need to post the warrant this week, obviously, with your recommendations. And then we'll get you everything. We'll email it to you in advance on how to make all the motions.
Okay. Sounds good.
We didn't want to have to do any of those meet this at 7 o'clock in the morning before the 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many people would want to meet at 7 a.m. But
all
You
right.
could just have a sleepover on the football field.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. I don't think, well, I don't recall any minutes that had to be reviewed. So we don't have minutes. Wednesday is off. So short of, did we want to do something, speaking in code, at the town meeting for what we collected for, or is that at some future date?
I think future date.
But again, some of you may or may not be there, so you'll come back.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good then. Then at 9:56. Tom, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, good night. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the evening, as fun as it was. Any further discussions? Hearing none. To the vote. Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Absolutely.
And Rick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you all. Have a great week.
Thank you very much. I hope you all have a wonderful night. Good night, everyone. Good night,
Everyone leave out often.
Good night, Walter.